Tánaiste, I hope it is clear at this stage that there is no level of atrocity that Israel is not willing to commit against the Palestinian people. It should have been clear long before now for a state that was built on ethnic cleansing, on an ongoing basis, on apartheid, on a 17-year-long siege of Gaza, but now clearly, when you look at the massacre in Gaza, it should be clear. Now the question is, under the Genocide Convention, states are required to prevent, not just to punish, genocide. My question is, what are you going to do about what is clearly a genocide to prevent it?
Deputy, sanctions are a tool of the EU. Just to answer the question that you've tabled, and I'll deal with the specifics of your question also. Sanctions are a tool of the EU Common Foreign and Security Policy and part of a comprehensive approach to the pursuit of EU foreign policy objectives, along with political dialogue and other complementary efforts and instruments. Ireland actively pushed for agreement at EU level on sanctions against violent settlers in the West Bank, in addition to further sanctions on Hamas. And I welcome the recent adoption of those sanctions and will continue to make the case for targeted sanctions on individuals and entities under the EU Global Human Rights Sanctions regime, where there is evidence of consistent violation of human rights. In respect of the case initiated by South Africa against Israel under the Genocide Convention, at the International Court of Justice, I welcome in particular the order for additional provisional measures made by the Court on the 28th of March, requiring Israel to ensure the unhindered provision at scale of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance in recognition of the dire situation unfolding in Gaza. It is for the ICJ itself to decide whether its orders have been respected by the parties in any given case, and I expect that the Court will consider compliance with its provisional measures orders during the merits phase of this case, and that this consideration will be reflected in its final ruling in due course. As I have confirmed previously and earlier to the House, you may not have been here, Ireland is continuing to work on its intervention in respect of this case. So I have said we will intervene, and we're going to file an intervention under Article 63 of the Genocide Convention, and it will be focused on broadening the definitions and parameters by which this issue can be considered, and namely we're working on the humanitarian dimension and the prevention of aid going into Gaza in particular. South Africa has been given till October to file its substantive case, what is termed the memorial case, and it will do that in October, and we will file our intervention. We're already working on it, but obviously we want to see the substantive case from South Africa as well, as has exactly the situation that applied in terms of Ukraine.
Tánaiste, People Before Profit put a motion to this Dáil in November of last year, asking you to take a case against Israel for genocide under the ICJ, and you voted against it. Now, belatedly, because South Africa did what Ireland should have done, you're belatedly saying there will be some class of intervention. And I suppose later is better than not at all. But when you consider the horror that has ensued for the people of Gaza and continues, you should really be ashamed, frankly, of your failure to support that call in November of last year. But setting that aside, the Convention requires not just punishment after the fact. Article 1 says prevent. Prevent. Now, what the students in Trinity College have done is sought to prevent by imposing economic damage on a state capable of committing a genocide. Are we going to follow the lead of the Trinity students and impose sanctions now that will hurt the state committing genocide? We can do it. We should audit everything in this houses of the Oireachtas. We should look at every single support given to Israeli companies. Of course, we should expel the Israeli ambassador. We should do things that will impact on a state that is committing genocide.
Deputy, when you spoke earlier about the International Court of Justice, I don't think you were upfront with the Irish people in terms of how it works. And you were deliberately populist and polemic about it. And that has been the case in many issues around this question. Ireland wants to be credible in terms of how we legally intervene in international courts, so that when we do it with purpose, we do it with credibility, and we do it in an informed and substantive way that gets results at the court level. Now, when you go through international courts, of course, those interventions by themselves aren't going to resolve the immediate breaches of humanitarian law that are occurring. We're very clear in Ireland. We've also become involved in the International Criminal Court, as you know, in the ICJ previously, in terms of the legality of the occupation and the obligations, and we have financially supported those courts. Like, Ireland has put its money where its mouth is, but also we are doing, and I respect the courts. I don't treat the courts as political platforms. I believe when we make a legal intervention, it has to be substantive, it has to be informed, and it has to be with with a view to getting a result and an outcome, not just for some political grand statement at a particular point in time through emotion or whatever like that. And you know that deep down, but you'll never say it, because it's much more attractive to keep pretending that that this side of the house somehow doesn't share your empathy with the people of Palestine, or that we don't share horror with what's happening. We do, and we've condemned it. And we've been strong at international fora in condemning it. But I get the sense all of the time that you're endeavouring to drive a wedge within the House, when the overwhelming view of the Irish people is one of condemnation of what's happening in Gaza, and doing everything we can to end it.
I've been campaigning for Palestinian rights since I was there in 1987. I lived there, and my position has been very consistent over a very long time. As has been the movement in this country of solidarity with Palestine. And that is that we need to do, in relation to the apartheid state of Israel, what was done to the apartheid state of South Africa. A state based on apartheid and ethnic cleansing has no place in the civilised world. Surely now we have the evidence that that is the case, if you didn't accept it and governments didn't accept it before. A state capable of genocide is not a normal state. A state built on apartheid and ethnic cleansing, the siege of Gaza, is not a normal state. Stop treating it like a normal state. Treat it like the apartheid state of South Africa. And of course, governments were eventually forced to recognise that because of actions of things like the Dunn Stores workers, right, who said, we are not going to handle the goods from a state that is capable of this horror. We should do the same. That is what Mothers Against Genocide I handed a letter to Simon Harris yesterday. Hundreds of doctors appealing now. They're saying sanctions as doctors. They're saying sanctions now. Stop this horror. Stop treating the state, doing this to the Palestinians as if it's some sort of normal state.
But again, Deputy, come on. Are you seriously suggesting we can effectively dismantle the Israeli state?
The Dunn Stores workers played a big role. Big role.
Come on,
big role.
I mean, your solution, I think, just fails to, in any shape or form, deal with the complexity of the situation. It's not as simple as you've put forward at all. It is a long history, as you've correctly pointed out. It's not as simple as sort of recognising one state and de-recognising another and attempting to dismantle it. That would cause, in my view, untold further violence and upheaval. In our view, Palestinians and Israelis have to live side by side, in harmony and in peace. That's the only solution into the future. I mean,
free Palestine.
And that is why we condemned October the 7th and Hamas, because that form of jihadism and rapine was unacceptable too. You've never done that. You've never condemned it.
Hamas weren't even around in 1987.
Because of your particular view. And I don't support, I believe Israel has no strategic approach to the Middle East and has failed abysmally in developing a strategic approach. I do believe early generations of leaders had a better sort of approach to the idea of a two-state solution and getting there. But it's a far more complex situation than you are articulating here today.
Israel's not interested.
And I don't believe, and in terms of, Ireland is doing everything it possibly can. It may not appeal to the popular sort of rhetoric that you will engage in from time to time, but we are doing, and by the way, Ireland is recognised in the Arab world for its leadership on this question. And maybe you could acknowledge that from time to time.